Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Manatee Tiger Bay's program on the candidates for Bradenton City Council Wards 3 and 4. My name is Chris Willie, and I am the president of Manatee Tiger Bay. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let me introduce the candidates. First, we have Patrick Roff and Cornelia Winn, Bill Sanders, and Bemis Smith. And I'm going to read a little bit of a bio on each one of them, and then we'll get started. Patrick is a three-term Bradenton City Councilman and former Vice Mayor who began his political career following a long tenure of citizen action. Patrick moved into Wares Creek neighborhood 30 years ago and helped turn Wares Creek flood control project, which had been stalled for 25 years, into a reality. Before and since the flood control project was completed, he has been recognized by Keep Manatee Beautiful for the biannual Wares Creek cleanups that he has led. Since taking office, Patrick has served as chair or president of the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, Manatee Minnesota League of Cities, Manatee Sarasota Metropolitan Planning Organization, and he has served on the USF Advisory Council, Sarasota Bradenton Regional Airport Advisory Board, Manatee County Public Library Board, and a number of community boards. He attended the Florida Redevelopment Academy to become a certified redevelopment professional and has been instrumental in the evolution of the city, such as Riverwalk Park, the Pink Hotel into the Hampton Inn Suites, John and Rebecca Neal Park Community Garden and Kayak Launch, Manatee Performing Arts Center, Marriott Springs Hotel, Twin Dolphin Marina expansion, and the remodeling of Lecom Field. Cornelia Winn worked in her parents' business in the first 30 years of her life. 20. These are poor glasses. Working at the register of their flower shop or looking at maps and planning delivery routes. She also spent several years scooping ice cream at what used to be Christine's Sweets. Her teenage years were spent at the farm feeding and saddling horses or teaching people how to ride. Currently, Cornelia works as a Salesforce administrator for Progressive Insurance. In the past, she worked as a custom service manager at a local Bradenton insurance office and worked as an events manager. She has a master's degree in international business from the University of Florida and received an AA and BAS degree from State College of Florida in international business. She is involved in the community as board secretary of CareNet Minnesota, board secretary of Manatee County Young Republicans, and is on the nuisance abatement board in the city of Bradenton. She states she has the education, background, and skills to keep Bradenton moving forward and bring a commitment to engage, educate, and excite future generations of voters about the importance of being involved in the community. Bill Sanders is a graduate of Indiana University, having earned a degree in business administration. He retired after working over 4 decades in the financial business world, heading large projects with strategic plans that have been well organized, on budget, and on time. Some of his work experience includes small business administration in the Eastern District of the U.S., marketing and finance consultation in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and Winn Transportation Management Systems. His beginning experience with city government was as a city administrator to the mayor while attending college. Bill has experience showing leadership in controversial issues. In 1999, his first wife, Donna, was killed when a drunk boater struck their boat. He lobbied Iowa lawmakers and worked with news media, city, and state organizations to make a drunken boating law. Iowa tried unsuccessfully for 20 consecutive years to pass this legislation. Donna's law was passed within 1 year of the accident. After spending vacations yearly in Bradenton since 1985 and traveling throughout the United States, he found there is no place he would rather live than Bradenton. He and his second wife, Ellen, purchased their home in Bradenton in 2011. Bemis Smith graduated with a BA in economics from the University of the South in Sewanee. After graduation, he lived and worked in New York City and then Washington, D.C., where he worked on political campaigns throughout the southeastern United States as a fundraising and political consultant. In 1988, he was appointed to the Department of Housing and Urban Development under Secretary Jack Kemp as liaison with members of the U.S. House of Representatives. He promoted administration priorities and prepared secretaries for testimony before relevant committees. Bemis then became a special assistant for multifamily housing, handling policy and public relations issues related to HUD multifamily housing projects. In 1992, Bemis was appointed by Secretary Kemp to represent the department on the Presidential Task Force for Hurricane Andrew. Bemis moved to Bradenton and began working in real estate investment and construction and founded the construction company he still runs. After buying a historic home in East Bradenton, he worked with his neighbors to revive the old Manatee Neighborhood Association, and he became president. He was appointed to the Downtown Development Authority prior to running for his current city council seat. He has held various positions, including vice mayor, fire commissioner, as well as representing the city on and chairing the 12th Circuit Juvenile Justice Board, and as a member of the Tampa Bay Regional Transit Authority. He has served on the Habitat for Humanity Advisory Board and currently sits on the Manatee Children's Services Board. And now we will hear from the candidates. Pat, would you come up?
Thank you all for being here. I want to thank Tiger Bay first for hosting this, and thank you for your attendance. And I want to thank Chris for just giving my speech. So at this point, I'll take questions. Now, I guess what I'll do is, since I think a lot of people here know what the city's been doing recently, and you know, my bio has just been read. I'll kind of just give you a brief history of who I am and why we're here. In 1987, my wife finished college in Tampa for her second degree in education, and after several offers of school systems, she was offered a position in Manatee County, and that was our top choice. And she's been a teacher ever since. I'm very proud of the fact that this is her 32nd year. She's the librarian at Manatee High, and I'm extremely proud of her. She's a second-generation English teacher. My beautiful daughter, Emily, was a standout student at Manatee High, class of 2004, all-state athletics, musical talent. She served with our church, Sacred Heart Church, from the time she was in second grade through college. And upon graduating to the USF School of Music, she was the music director at St. Bernard's Church on the island. So what I'm laying out there is my family is a commitment of public service. Even myself, my business for 20 years prior to politics was, I was an arborist for this community, mainly in West Bradenton. I got to know the residents very well. Through community service, I bought a beautiful home in an older neighborhood. I kept wondering when someone was going to fix up this beautiful old neighborhood that has all these beautiful homes in it, and came to the realization that it's me. No one's going to do it. So we had a group of people in my living room, which grew to The Women's Club was right down the street. They were struggling at the time, so I got together with them, and we made a partner, joint mutual operation partner. They needed a cause and publicity, and I needed a meeting space, so we turned it into a 280 home neighborhood that is completely revitalized, and right now, very proud of that. I'll go back to my daughter. You know, after her time with the St. Bernard's Church, you know, she went off to experience the big city. She was in corporate America and pursued her third degree, master's in speech pathology, and she's pursuing her doctorate in speech pathology. It turns out she has a gift with autistic children, and I think I really am hoping that she can do something wonderful in that arena. As far as what I think I bring to the table with the city is I'm a change artist. You know, we talked about the neighborhood, we talked about the creek. No one could figure out how to get that dredged. I remember Carl Callahan asking me on the first day of office, so how are you going to get Wares Creek done? I said, Carl, I don't know, I haven't done it yet. I'll tell you later. So I was on the board of directors for the Art Center when it was known as the Art League. I worked with the president, Judy Blake, and Diana Shelby, and we did a transformation over there, turning it into the new Art Center. I was just there last week. There's some great plans coming that are still yet to be revealed, but it's something that's a work in action. I can tell you that also when the players were threatening to leave for Palmetto because of the old structure that they were in right across from City Hall, it was a bit of a bugaboo, and you know, they were wanting someone from City Hall to come over and talk to them, and everyone knew that there was a crowd of angry people with pitchforks and torches. So being the new guy on the council, they said, let Mikey do it. His name was Pat. So I went over there and we listened to them and calmed them down, and very proud of the fact that talked to the city council and Carl Callahan, whom found the new location. Basically, Carl did some arm twist, and I'm going to give him a shot here on getting that current site over there on the on 3rd Avenue, which to me made perfect sense. We had the museum, the art center, and the theater. And then little known fact, the city loaned a great deal of money to the Performing Arts Center to get that up and running. So once again, change agent. When we were opening the Riverwalk Park in the middle of the recession, we had to float a $6.5 million bond. We already owned the land. We heard from so many people that said, you know, that's insane. It's an unsafe place. No one will use it. You know. Well, they were wrong. Actually, that park has turned into not only one of our gems. It actually, on the year it opened, it got an award at the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, a top award for open spaces and public recreation. I'm the one that nominated that. I'm proud of my public service on all the different boards and committees that I do. It takes time, it takes effort. And I think I'm most proud of the fact that every single board beyond the council that I've served on, they have tracked me for leadership. It's not something you apply for. They all have nominating committees. And I've been the chair. I've always been the leader of the Minnesota League of Cities. I was a vice chair and chair of the MPO, secretary, treasurer, vice chair, and a chairman of the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, a 50-year-old organization that's very important for this region, people don't realize. And a quick note, I'm only the second person in city history to have achieved that. And I can see by my stopwatch, I've just used up 6 minutes and 12 seconds.
Now please welcome Cornelia Winn.
All right, thank you guys for having me here. Prior to starting this election, I didn't run in all the political circles. I wasn't looking to make the right connections to run for office. So I'm relatively new to hearing about your organization, but one thing that I've heard over and over again since starting this race is that Tiger Bay Club is on the lips of everybody who's involved in the community. So it's both exciting to be here in front of you guys and incredibly intimidating. But thank you all for having me here. So you heard a little bit about my background. I got my bachelor's degree here from State College of Florida, and then a master's degree from UF. And while I was attending UF and getting my master's degree, I was also working, and I had my daughter while I was in school and still finished the program on time. So I can absolutely attest that if you want something to get done, you ask a busy person to do it, and they will get it done. My grandparents first bought a house here in city limits about 25 years ago. My parents followed suit shortly after, and so I've been here ever since. I absolutely love living here in Bradenton. I commute up to St. Pete most days for work. I would love to work just here in Bradenton, but jobs in IT or technology are few and far between in our county. I love my job. I love working in technology, and that's part of the reason why I can safely say I'll never be a career politician. I love what I do, and I see a void here on City Council, and I can fill it. I know I have the skills, diversity of skill set that we don't currently have on there. So diversity is one of those words that we hear all the time. It's in politics, it's in the private circle, and it's important, not just referring to gender or race, but you want to have a diverse city council, because if you have different skill sets, different backgrounds, different ideas, then that's how you create a change agent. If your whole city council is homogenous, everyone's got the same ideas, the same experiences, then you're going to be really great at some things, and then other areas are going to be lacking. So that's how I feel when I look at the city. I see some areas that are really accelerating and really doing well, but then when you look at other areas like technology, we've fallen way behind. Our online presence is almost non-existent. So that's, as a city council person, that's a diverse expertise that I bring to the table, an area that I can help move us forward that's not currently on city council as we have it today. So the reason I say that public service, politics is never going to be my career is because we see that a lot. We see people get elected and then they sit in that seat and hold on to it as tightly as they can for the next 20 or 30 years. It's their retirement plan almost. And that's not what moves us forward. So everyone here will agree that Patrick's done a great job with Wares Creek. And when he first got into office, he was really motivated. He did a great thing there. But what I hear from a lot of people, like if you talk to people in Village of the Arts, is he's promised to bring us revitalization, but we don't see it here. So that's what's important with changeover in elected seats. Is when someone first gets in, they're excited and they get things done, but then they settle into the rut. They settle into the government way of doing things, the status quo. And it's important that we keep changing things up when we bring new ideas and fresh perspectives into the seat. All right, so another platform of mine has been engagement and getting the people of Bradenton to really feel ownership and a commitment to their city, to realize how important their say is. So one of the ways that I would propose doing this is electing people that are motivated to be in the community, whether it's talking at schools or attending events downtown, having a meet your city council booth, getting people to meet the people on city council and understand how it works. Because right now it feels like such a foreign concept. If you talk to a student, they don't know who your city council people are or what city council does. So if we were in schools talking to kids, if we were having internships or open houses, opening up city government where people could get in there and see what's going on, see how they can get involved, see if there's a board that they can join or any area that they can bring influence to their city. It's incredibly closed off right now. You can stumble through our website and you might find an opportunity to join something, but do we have a Facebook? Do we live stream our events? Do we put out an agenda where people can actually participate in city council meetings? So we see a lot of how much time do I have? A minute. I have a minute. So we see a lot of superficial changes, like moving city council meetings to the evening. But how are we communicating that to people, that those meetings are in the evening? We don't have social media, so we're not communicating it there. We don't have a newsletter, or at least I have not been able to find one. So let's make changes. Let's open up the government where people can get involved and make it easy for them to get involved. I have a few more seconds, so I'm really glad to be here again. It's really nice to talk to you all, and I'm looking forward to meeting more of you after lunch.
Please welcome Bill Sanders.
Well, thank you, Tiger Bay, for allowing me to come here to speak to you today. I want to thank my wife, Ellen. She's sitting over here because she allowed me to run. And you know what the old saying is, Mama gets what she wants, and if she ain't happy, you're in trouble. You know, the other day, I was downtown. I ran into this guy, and he said he was a politician. And I said, oh. I said, are you going to run again? And he said, yeah, I'm going to run again. I said, well, what are you going to do for us this next 4 years? He said, nothing. I said, well, didn't you do that the last 4 years? He said, yeah, but I wasn't done yet. So that's what I think about politicians. I'm not a politician, so don't accuse me of that. You can accuse me of a lot of things, but that's not one of them. I want to thank my opponent also. He had an article in the paper, and I'll quote it so I don't get it wrong. He became dissatisfied with Ward 4 Councilman Jeff Carmen. I felt we weren't getting the attention we needed. Well, you know, you took the words right out of my mouth. Thanks for giving me a start to my speech. Because that councilman only had 4 years, one term, and you've been here 17. Why I ran is this all started with a broken street light. A councilman that refused to respond to me. I knew something that simple. There had to be more. So I started walking the streets of Bradenton, talking to people and businessmen, and let me tell you, there's more. The local newspaper said that there was 3 items that was most important in our community. 1 was traffic, 2 was education, and 3 was the opioid epidemic. I think it might be close to a pandemic. 1 person dies every 15 minutes in this country. At last week's city council meeting, where my opponent voted against the addiction treatment facility near our waste treatment plant, here's a picture of it, he helped turn a 2-hour meeting into a 5-hour circus. My opponent has no moral compass or empathy for people. He defended the neighborhood bar that is not even close. I want to thank the 3 councilmen that voted for it. Thank you. We need a councilman that will work full-time for the citizens in our city. That would be me, as my opponent has collected a salary from the taxpayers for 17 years, showing little to no results on our tough economic issues and our financial crisis of 2008-9, while at the same time collected government payments as a FEMA inspector through a third-party company, also working as a city councilman. Dual salaries on a taxpayer dime. My opponent, I hope, will not stand up here after me and claim victory for the good projects this city is doing, like Riverwalk, etc. Because any councilman can do that. Most of those votes come in 5-0. A successful leader shows his or her leadership during tough economic times. I've been receiving a high volume of calls and emails since I started to run. Recently, a city worker called me and was upset that our city didn't give him a raise for 3 or 4 years. He told me that we were the only government entity to not ask for BP oil money spill. So I checked it out, and lo and behold, he was right. The city of Bradenton did not apply for these funds while laying off many employees and not giving cost of living wages to those left behind. And guess who voted it down? My opponent. Here's some stats. I'm a facts guy. I'm a financial guy. I look at the facts and then I talk to you. Sarasota County received $14.2 million. City of Sarasota received $3.2 million. City of Venice, $1.9 million. Town of Longboat Key, $1.2 million. City of Bradenton Beach, $333,000. Palmetto, $365,000. Manatee County, $6.3 million. Bradenton, 0. You know, an old accountant came up to me once and said, Bill, figures don't lie, liars figure. And I've kept that with me for 40 years, and there's a lot of truth to it. Being an expert in money and finance, the first place I researched was city records and the city budget. As I attended the budget meeting a couple of weeks ago, I was surprised that my opponent was even there, because he never showed up to one the year before. And out of the last 13 budget meetings, he has missed 8 of them. Those are city records. I have it. I'd like to give it to you. I don't need it any further. Budget meetings are the lifeblood of a city, just as they are the personal lifeblood of a household. I've never been late on a payment. I've never been foreclosed on, and I've never filed bankruptcy. Every councilman should have to reveal their finances to be expected to fulfill their jobs and duties in the financial arena. Why do I believe I'm qualified? I'm a graduate of Indiana University with a degree in business administration. I retired with over 4 decades of working in the financial world. I've worked as a city manager, a city assistant administrative to a local mayor while I was attending college. And people, the story I'm about to tell you now is difficult for me to talk about publicly. In 1999, my first wife was killed in a boating accident in front of me. One evening while we were enjoying our beautiful lake to watch the sunset, a storm rolled in and we thought we should head back to the marina. Little did we expect some drunken boaters to hit us head on. Next thing I knew, I was on the operating table. As a priest approached me, I knew my life had changed forever. The state we lived in had no drunken boating law, one of only 2 states in the country. Every year for 20 straight consecutive years, passage of this law was attempted but failed. With the help of friends, family, organizations, and the media, less than a year later, through lobbying Congress, Donna's Law, right here it is, folks, Donna's Law was passed by Congress 100%. I saw a wrong that needed to be made right. I painfully tell this story not for sympathy, but to express the success that this law did. This is the pen that signed that legislation by our governor. Nothing can bring back my wife. I know that. However, families will not have to suffer as I did. I have saved lives. I am a fixer. I have the time to dedicate my full time to the citizens of Bradenton, and I base my decisions on verifiable facts and data. We purchased our home here in Bradenton in 2011 after vacationing here since 1985. I know, please bear with me. After Donna's Law passed, shortly thereafter, my father died. I'm almost done. He'd been married to my mother for 55 years. So it was a rough time for me and my mother. So I lived here in Bradenton a couple of years with her. And I will close by saying and telling you that I will work full-time for you as I have, and I have no personal business interests, no business interests whatsoever. I'm retired, and I will be selling my home out of state, and I'll be moving here. I am here permanently, but I am going to be building a home here permanently. I'm going to tear down my house and build another one. And you know, I've been accused in the local paper by my opponent by being a Monday morning quarterback. And here's how I reply. I will not spike the football on the 50-yard line as our opponent does and claims victory. I will run to the end zone for the score and win for our city, and I will show up to work. Please come and see me afterwards. I'm here to talk to you about all these issues and many more, and if you don't have time for that, call me, email me, or come to my home. Thank you.
Now let's welcome Bemis Smith.
Thank you. I'll take a deep breath and try to address this on a less vitriolic note. I wanted to thank everybody for being here today and for Tiger Bay for inviting us to be here and express a little bit about ourselves and what we've been doing here in the city. They told us we had 6 minutes to speak, but everybody here knows how notorious I am for turning 6 minutes into 60 minutes. So I think part of the crowd that didn't arrive knew that my talk wouldn't be done till after 1, so they were going to try to get here in time for the question session. But I did want to read the following 2 sentences and felt that they were a good depiction of what has gone on and is going on in our town. Quote, "Our city of Bradenton has transformed over the last decade from a sleepy town between Tampa and Sarasota to a dynamic hub offering culture, sports, nightlife, and the arts. The future promises more of the same with the renovation and rebranding of the South Florida Museum, a new city block parking garage with retail at the street level, a new hotel, and lots of new residents for those who desire an urban lifestyle. Add to that the extension of our successful Riverwalk to the east, improvements to the current Riverwalk, Old Main streetscape improvements, planning for a new bridge, and the rebirth of Mineral Springs Park in Old Manatee, which is my neighborhood, now 600% larger than it was 2 years ago. And you have a clearer picture of the exciting change that continues in the city. But we're not perfect. We have traffic problems in our city that must be addressed. What makes it particularly difficult is that, for the most part, it doesn't originate or end in the city, but it becomes our problem nonetheless. And because of these broad origins, we must have council members who are able to work across jurisdictional lines with other cities, with the county, with the state, to implement solutions with decades of involvement in this community. I believe that I'm the best person in this race to do this work. Like most exciting communities such as ours, especially in coastal areas, we also have a need for affordable housing for our citizens. As a building contractor, I understand many of the impediments to this and have worked with my colleagues to promote both low-income and workforce housing in our area. But since much of the cost of the housing is fixed, we also must look at ways to get incomes up so that our constituents can afford to live here. This is the primary reason I push for the creation of an economic development department within the city, and to date we have numerous successes associated with their efforts, including Sons Insurance and Spring Hill Suites right across the street. All of these are why I'm asking voters to allow me to serve another term. I know I have the experience and proven ability to work with my fellow council members as well as other entities to get these efforts to fruition as quickly and effectively as possible. Now, I don't know much about my opponent. He seems to know a lot about me, and I don't necessarily disagree with his quotation of facts. It's more his interpretation of facts that often come into play. And maybe he's a good guy. I'm starting to wonder now. I don't know. And this is exactly why I believe I'm better than my opponent to continue the improvements in our city. It brings to mind the truism: people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I don't believe my opponent has shown that he is committed in our area. I'm the only candidate for Ward 4 that has any experience in the needs of my ward. I've lived in my home for over 20 years. bought it on the courthouse steps when it was condemned, and have perpetually, it seems like, worked to restore it. I have participated as a DDA board member, a neighborhood association president, and a member of numerous governmental and nonprofit boards. And I have a proven history of success. I have voted in this community for over 22 years, not 5 months. My property here is my homestead, and our property appraiser sends my tax bill to my local address, not to an address 1,000 miles away. My vehicles are registered in Manatee County as they're required to be when I take an oath at risk of perjury that I am a resident of this county. My opponents are all registered in another state. And when I tell you that what I've done and can do, you can look at a long record here in the community, and you can read my resume and see a straightforward, detailed chronicle of my background. I'm completely transparent with no need to distort. He talks about leadership, but the title leader must be bestowed by others. It should not be self-anointed title. In all fairness, my opponent may be a decent guy, but all of his efforts, as he well notes I've accused him of, are Monday morning quarterbacking. He has attacked us on issues like Tropicana. At one point, he brought out that we didn't do enough to keep Tropicana here in 2003, and he made his assessment of that through the newspaper articles. Well, if I give him the same deference and look at the Des Moines Grand Prix, which he was there for a year and left in a shuffle because the Grand Prix lost $315,000, I don't make the assumption that Bill Sanders was the cause of that, because I don't know. But he makes similar assumptions because of what he reads in the paper here. As far as some of his specific accusations, he can claim that his streetlight issue was a problem, but I will tell you the facts. Bill Sanders called me on January 4th at 2:04 in the afternoon. He got me on my cell phone because I have my office phone forwarded to my cell phone so that I can get calls 24 hours a day for people who call the city. I spoke to him for 43 minutes at that time about his streetlight and other issues, which happens to be an FPL streetlight. I called our Public Works Department. We don't fix FPL streetlights, and returned a call to him 30 minutes later. It just so happens that Irma had hit here 3 months before, and FPL was a little slow on getting out and fixing streetlights in my neighborhood. That has nothing to do with me as a constituent and my constituent relations. And you can tell whatever stories you want. Those are the facts. So in conclusion today, I would ask you guys to look at my record. Look at it very closely. Look at what I've done in my life. Look at my kids that I've raised here in the community. Look at the commitment I've given to this community over the years. I can go through a bunch of points that would indicate what I think I could do in the future and what I've done in the past, but I ask you to look at mine and look at his, because that's the primary difference in this, is that I am committed to Manatee County. I've raised my kids in Manatee County. I've lived here and worked here. I have a business here, and I ask for your support on November the 6th. Thank you. And I got a loud voice that I don't need a microphone.
Well, it's time for the Q&A. To ask questions of our speakers, you must be a member of Tiger Bay. And see Elaine if you want to sign up and ask some questions. She'll be happy to take your money. Please limit yourself to one question, and please state your name and whether or not you are a member.
My name is Matt Bauer. I am a board member of Tiger Bay. I'd like the candidates to address the infrastructure within the city. I haven't heard anything about especially the spills into Manatee River or anything as a result of our infrastructure. How do you plan to not only keep up with the infrastructure, we actually have a plan to stay ahead of infrastructure with everything we have going on within the city and the county.
Great. Pat, we'll start with you.
Thank you. And let's get this straight. You and I did not talk ahead of time, right?
No, sir, I don't think so.
Okay. I have here an example of something that I'm quite proud of. In 2012, as soon as we got done, as soon as we saw the end of the recession, we've been pushing forward that we need to do something about our infrastructure. To be clear, there are state streets in the city, State Road 64, Cortez, and then there are county streets, and then there are city streets. And the streets that we are responsible are for the city streets. We started an infrastructure improvement campaign in 2012. We started with a modest repaving program. We started generating, we saw how it was working and how we liked it, so we put a little bit more in, we found more money, and then we went after the infrastructure of the city, realizing that we had, this is a 4-inch water main. This is the pipes that I inherited. It's cast iron, so you can see it's not 4 inches, is it? That's about a 2-inch water main. We've been replacing these to the tune of, I think we've got about $6 million invested so far. We replaced almost 50 miles of streets and lines to date since 2012. We committed most of the half-cent sales tax that came in towards this. We're also using our enterprise fund when we're going after the sewer pipes, and we're replacing these pipes with PVC, which has a 50 to 100-year lifespan. Also, when we did the Wares Creek project, there were 4 bridges. It was our assignment in that project was we were at the bottom of the food chain, and we were responsible to replace 4 bridges. We did so on time, on budget, and I could say at a great price. We have a great engineering team over at Public Works. We got 4 bridges done for $7 million. They were all over 50 years old, and Swift Mud paid for half of that. And we took out low-interest loans through government programs to pay for the balance. So while other governments are talking about infrastructure, that's all they're doing is talking. I brought this pipe here to show you we're actually getting it done. Cornelia, would you like to talk?
Yeah, that's a great question. And if you're around here often, you'll see that, especially right now, it's constant construction. So, I mean, I don't know what exactly you're looking for me as far as a laid out plan. I'm absolutely in favor of continuing the improvements, and I'm very conscious when it comes to the environment. So, of course, I would want to do anything we can to prevent future spillage into the river. I don't have like a detailed budget or something to lay out for you, but I'm absolutely in favor of continuing the improvements.
Infrastructure in my ward is non-existent. Now, from Manatee Avenue to the river is my ward, from Green Bridge to 75. I mean, there's flooding in the area. There's pipes looks just like that. I had mine just replaced the other day. And so I was at the city meeting the other day, and the budget meeting, and there's money there, and I'm going to be asking for it in my ward. So I'm hoping that it will improve in my area. And by the way, my race in Des Moines was the only race in the country televised live by ESPN. And there was a $3 million budget for a 3-day race. I was under budget. I can't help from what the marketing department did on the sales.
I guess that's continuation of kind of where we are. When my opponent talks about the lack of infrastructure, what I will talk about briefly is to tell you where we are with the infrastructure. A few years ago, about 8 years ago, the city decided we needed to step up because we'd fallen behind for years and put an infrastructure program into place. Starting at that time, we set aside $2.4 million a year for replacement of utility lines funded by the enterprise fund, which is actually water and sewer fees. Council decided that we wanted to go on a pay-as-you-go program versus a bond issue, which would require the whole city to be torn up at the same time. Since then, we also added $1 million a year in paving, which you see everywhere when you go around the city. Unfortunately, it can only be used on city streets, which doesn't apply to Manatee Avenue and many 26th Street and many of the other streets. Additionally, when sales tax passed, we added another $500,000 of the sales tax revenues to that. So at this point, we're expending approximately $5.7 million a year on infrastructure improvements within the city. As a perfect example of what we've been doing is we're putting in a new pipe out coming from Perico because there had been some issues out there because it hadn't been fixed. You'll see the crews out there today, for that matter, putting in a new sewer line. So the problem in the neighborhood where my opponent lives is the fact that sometime in the past, the builders were allowed to build houses in an area that is now lower than the river. So when I drove through the water, there's water in front of his house the other day. The problem is when the water in the river against the seawall is higher than the street, there's not a whole lot that can be done to keep it draining out. Now, because of the increased water levels we've seen, I asked our public works director and our community development director to come up with protocols on how we could raise the streets so we at least have streets out of the water. But it's a more complicated process because you don't want to keep water away from the river and in people's front yards. But I've asked them to try to come up with a plan. So for my opponent to indicate that he's being ignored is disingenuous. Thank you.
Anyone else have a question? Please step up. We have some time. Please state your name and your membership.
CJ Garcia, and I am a member, recent member, thanks to Elaine. You were right about her taking money. I do have a question, and it seems to be making a lot more headlines, and it's been in the papers recently, and I do have a pretty good idea of where Patrick and Bemis stand on this, but I want to open it up, to the forum. What are your thoughts, and do you have any alternatives? I know there's still studies and things being done, but for the flyover issue, that's for some reason just taken off. It's in its initial stages, but it is something that definitely the community as a whole is interested in and would like to be addressed.
We'll start at the opposite end this time. Bemis?
I'll be quick because it was mentioned that most people here know where I stand because of my stances in the paper. I had indicated that I'm open-minded. I spoke to numerous people on phone calls who were opposed to the flyover. I indicated that I'm not wedded to the flyover, but at this point in time, it appeared to be the only economically feasible and plausible plan that was in place. But since we don't have to vote on it, and we had the ability, the state needed to do more studying, we passed an ordinance within the city to ask the state to move forward on their studies to see what they needed. And again, the only reason, I'll say it quickly, that the flyover was the initial is because it doesn't require any new right-of-way. The other proposals were to take the roadway down 9th Street East, which would take you right through Pelosi and all the historic district, which would pretty much destroy every one of those buildings there, not to mention what happened on the north side of the river. The other choice was to go down 15th Street, which would destroy a lot of residential houses coming from 301 up to, in the minority neighborhood, up to Manatee Avenue, and then cut through a substantial residential neighborhood north of Manatee before crossing the river. The last two were associated with going through Bradenton Castle property, which would require an extensive acquisition of funds all the way from 301. And then the fourth one was to run across the city golf course, run down the Braden River in the river and cross there over to Palmetto, which, as you can see, has a great deal of environmental impact. So while I'm open-minded and I've told everybody that, I want to see what the studies bring. It's not like we have a bunch of good choices. I would encourage anybody to let us know what's their favorite choices of the ones that I just presented to you, because that's the ones that DOT presented to us. Thank you.
Here we go again. Just for the record, Bradenton Herald is right here. Bemis, you said you didn't mind if a flyover was in our city as long as it wasn't in your ward. And you know, well, it can be verified. So I always like things verified. So we'll get that. I've got the article, by the way. And so just a couple of weeks ago, was at the Sarasota paper. You're interrupting me. It's a Sarasota paper where the guy asked me, he says, what if that flyover was right in your neighborhood? I said, that's the best place for it. That's where it'll be. That's how I feel about it. Because something has to be done. Let me tell you something. I've heard this bridge gate for 20 years. I lived with my mother. I told you this story. That's one of the reasons I told you. And they were talking about putting a bridge there 20 years ago. And here we are 20 years later, and we have no bridge. We have a traffic problem. And I just told you the story intentionally about my wife being killed because our legislators sat on their hands. It may have been preventable. And we can't wait any longer for somebody to do this job. And I've asked to be on the committees for that, and they won't allow me because I don't own a business here. They won't allow me because I'm not on city council. And I said, I'm going to fix that. There's a problem, and we can fix it.
Yeah, this is definitely what I have had people reach out to me the most regarding, is this flyover. And what I've heard from people in the city is that they just don't like really anything about it. So I can stand up here and we can debate on which of these three options kind of sucks the least. But and this, I'll admit, this is totally a pipe dream, okay, and this is kind of out of the box thinking, but as someone who does commute to St. Pete every day, someone who's in this traffic mess 4 times a week, what I would love is to see an out of the box idea. So if you look at, say, Miami, they built flyover, overpass, 4 layers deep, 5 layers deep until they couldn't fit anymore. And then they thought, well, let's invest more in public transportation. So now they have this great light rail that goes around the city, and now they're expanding it because it's been hugely successful. And obviously, Bradenton alone couldn't sustain something like that. We don't need it. But if we looked around Tampa Bay, is there some way we could work together to build a light rail for commuters that commute around the city? And again, it's not one of the 3 options, but to me, it's not a terrible idea because that could easily get people here to Bradenton that are visiting Tampa or Pinellas County. It could lighten up our traffic down to the beach. If we extended a wing down to the beach, it's better for the environment. So, I mean, I can pick an option like everybody says, none of them are great options. So I'd rather look at something else. Look at European cities. They don't have these issues because there's rail everywhere. So let's think of something different. Before we build all of Tampa Bay 4 layers deep in overpasses, let's see what we can do differently. What are other cities doing differently? So that's my answer.
Thank you very much. And for the records, I am an old Boy Scout, and our motto is always be prepared. For starters, I just want to go back to something that was said earlier. My opponent said that our board is homogenous and same thinking. I'm not sure if she's seen a city council meeting recently or in the past, I don't know, couple of years, but we're not anywhere near homogenous and same thinking. As a matter of fact, the last few meetings have been pretty close to a fist fight. This particular issue is a perfect example. You know, there are 5 different opinions on this. And it also goes back to this issue. when I was appointed to the MPO, I want to know what my MPO duties are, so I went to the MPO training seminar in Orlando for the weekend. It's probably the most unpleasant way to spend a weekend in Orlando, but it was informative. Right here is the CMNA study for March 2016. When I was vice chair, I started, this was after, as I was the vice chair, I was chair at this year. This was basically addressing the fact that we need to do something about the bridges in Manatee County. We have too many cars trying to cross the river on, I'm not sure what we're going to do, but we need to do something. So I take credit for getting the ball rolling on this. Also, to let you know, I spend a lot of time, I have the luxury of being a full-time councilman. This is what I do. I retired from my previous business. My wife and I are financially stable. As I said, my daughter's all grown up. You know, I put in, you know, sometimes a 40, 50-hour work week on city council. The city's running 365 days out of the year. I'm on call every day. So I spend a lot of time. I don't mind serving on these boards. I don't mind gathering information. The Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council in February 2016, on 2017, we had an all-day seminar on innovations in regional transportation, talking about transportation needs in the entire Tampa Bay region. This is the latest Central Manatee analysis, technical court. This is the latest analysis of it. Now, to be clear, where we are, there is no predetermined agenda to go on. What I want to do and have been focusing on is when this started, there was one focus group that was getting paid government money to do the study. I don't know what happened. They got fired. This new group showed up, and then all of a sudden, I was under the impression that we were being steered down a road when we're paying for a study. Now, I am very frugal with with tax dollars in general. I want to make sure that if I don't care whether it's state, federal, county, or city tax dollars, if tax money is dedicated towards something, it needs to go to something. And that means if we're paying for a study, by gosh, I want a study. I don't want a predetermined outcome. And that's what I was under the impression that what we were getting. So right now, I can tell you when this study started, there were 3 options. And then we got them up to 6, and now we got them to 12. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's progress, because there is no, make this perfectly clear. No matter what we decide to do, it's going to affect someone negatively. That's just the way it is. But the solution that needs to be done is the right thing, the smart thing, you know, because this is it. This is going to be, it's going to set, there's an illusion out there that if we go with the DeSoto Bridge flyover, that's a cheap, quick fix. It's not. It's almost 20 years out. A new bridge is 20 years. So they're about the same amount of time. But the difference is by the time we get done building whatever we build, it better be right, because that's going to be it. That's going to be what we're stuck with. And, you know, that's all I'm pushing forward at this point and forward, is that we don't get... One thing I have learned, dealing with the Army Corps of Engineers and the state DEP and SWIFT-MUD and everything, bureaucratic agencies protect themselves. That's what they do for a living. And they protect their income and they protect their way of life. And, you know, that's my job, is to serve the citizens. My job is to do my homework and make sure that the citizens are getting what they deserve. So what I can tell you is that I'm going to be watching this with a very keen eye and making sure that whatever study is done, it's going to be true. It's going to be accurate. And you're right, we don't know what that's going to be yet, but I don't want a slick sales pitch about something that may turn out to be the wrong thing, and 20 years from now we figure out, oh boy, we blew that one, time to start over again 20 years from now. There you go.
We have reached our time limit. First, one of our board members, Henry, will award the Tiger by the Tail for the best question. It's got two choices. Thank you all for attending our luncheon, and thanks to our speakers. And thanks to our board of directors and program committee. Please stand for recognition. Our next luncheon will be October 18th, and we will have a very crowded dais. It'll be the Manatee County Commission candidates, District 2, Reginald Bellamy and Dimitri Dennis, District 4, Melton Little and Misty Servia, and District 6, Candace Luther and Carol Whitmore. Members and guests, if you know someone who might be interested in an upcoming topic, please invite them as your guest. And remember, Pier 22 offers complimentary valet parking. Thanks to Charles Clapsaddle and METV for taping and broadcasting our forum on METV channels and YouTube. And you can check out their website, metvweb.com. Thank you all again.